on the Jerry Lawler, Jim Ross, Michael Cole angle from earlier this year. So that's why they kept running with it. They've changed it up now. It's no longer involving Jerry Lawler. It's involving Michael Cole and Jim Ross, something that was building for a significant amount of time. With the shots that Jim Ross used to take at Michael Cole in his blog for jrsbbq.com. JR's column is an interesting read, and it talks about a lot of important things in the professional wrestling industry. I doubt I'll ever have an interesting column like Jim Ross has had. I've written over 200 columns, but I don't think mine will ever be as interesting as Jim Ross's column, which he writes for jrsbbq.com, where he talks about a lot of issues. He even goes as far to mention TNA in his columns, and I don't know why he's getting away with that or how he's getting away with it. I enjoy reading Jim Ross's column, which you can find and subscribe to through jrsbbq.com, and his column is actually featured on a number of professional wrestling news websites like ProWrestling.com and PW Insider. And Michael Cole has even gone as far to make fun of Jim Ross's barbecue sauce, which he's made a phenomenal reputation over, and gone as far to make fun of Jim Ross's column, which he's mentioned Michael Cole in on an off-again, on-again basis. I think that this feud needs to be wrapped up. It needs to be taken off television, and titles like the Intercontinental Championship and United States Championship need to have credibility restored to it, because the 10 or 15 minutes you're taking out of a WWE 2-hour program, which is normally an hour and 45 minutes of actual TV time, can be used to focus on the Intercontinental Championship or the United States Championship, or even the Divas, who have gone into their own element over the last 10 years. I mean, women's wrestling is probably the best thing that SmackDown and Raw have been offering, especially on NXT. The seasons have been featuring women on and off again. I'd like to see something done that actually makes sense in WWE other than the announcer's angle, because the announcer's angle is pointless. I've seen the photos of Jim Ross that Michael Cole uses to promote this angle and his hatred towards Jim Ross. I don't agree with the photographs. I don't agree with whoever edited them for WWE television, and whoever came up with the storyline. It was probably John Laurinaitis one day when he had his head stuck so far up his ass that he couldn't see the light of day. I don't agree with whoever came up with it. I think this storyline has no business being on television, and it needs to be canceled. Like I said, I have no interest in the Jim Ross, Michael Cole angle, which was one time a Michael Cole, Jerry Lawler angle done for WrestleMania. The one who made that storyline look interesting was Stone Cold Steve Austin when he stunned Michael Cole, in my opinion. It wasn't Jerry Lawler or Jim Ross, or Michael Cole even, that made that storyline interesting. I think that, bringing Jim Ross back to team with Jerry Lawler was a good move. That was probably the most interesting thing they did when they had Jack Swagger and Michael Cole take on the legendary Hall of Fame team of Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler. But I think commentators in this business need to stick to what they're there to do, and that's commentate. And if they're not there to commentate, they have no business being in the professional wrestling industry. I mean, it's really insulting the likes of Bobby Eaton and Gorilla Monsoon, who meant so much to commentary back in 1985, and even going back as far as the team of Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura doing commentary. I think it really insults the legendary voices of this business, even back as far as Gordon Soley, who used to do commentary for his own promotion. I think that it's terrible, and it doesn't need to be on WWE programming. The announcers do not need to be getting more in-ring time than the Divas or the championships that have meant so much to the business. I mean, look at how much the United States Championship meant to the WCW, and now the announcers are getting more in-ring time and more spotlight than the United States Championship, which was held by the likes of Ric Flair, Sting, and Vader in WCW, and held by a tremendous amount of talent in WWE. I think that something really needs to be done, and there are so many problems with professional wrestling that Jim Ross talks about for his column featured on jrsbbq.com. It's a fantastic read, but the problem I have with all these issues is it's never going to reach a point of correction, and it needs to reach a point of correction, and the announcers receiving more in-ring time and more focus on them than major championships, and the major championship becoming the WWE and World Heavyweight Championships for each respective brand is wrong. I mean, there has to be something more other than those titles to compete for. So you're going to take the Intercontinental Championship, United States Championship, and have it come a close second to an announcer's angle. It's pointless. I mean, Jerry Lawler challenging for the WWE Championship, receiving his first title match in over 40 years, that could have been done with the announcers not having any involvement in it, because Jerry Lawler has given so much to the business. He's wrestled against many huge names, and he's had the privilege of actually getting the better of a lot of huge names like Bret Hart and Jake Roberts back in 1995, 1996. He could have been given a WWE title opportunity against Mike Mizanin without involvement from Michael Cole and without involvement from Jim Ross. What you really should have done there is have Jerry Lawler get into a championship match in some type of other form, not have the other announcers involved in it. I think it would have given that feud a bit more credibility and a bit more recognition than you would have gotten from having the announcers involved in it. So I really don't like the fact that Jerry Lawler was given the title opportunity with the involvement of the announcers. I think that Jerry Lawler should have been given a title opportunity on his own in a program with The Miz, because Jerry Lawler was able to make legends like Bret Hart and Jake Roberts mean something to the business back when he was a heel back in 95, 96, when he was in his prime. I think that Jerry Lawler was one of the best heels that the business ever produced. So I think that he could have went in probably as a heel in a championship match maybe 3 years ago. They didn't need to wait 40 years to give him a title opportunity, because he's held championships in virtually every other organization that he's made a phenomenal reputation for himself off of. So they didn't really need to make as big a deal out of the announcers being involved in the angle than they did. I think that Jerry Lawler definitely is one of the greatest ever, but he's just not treated as one of the greatest ever in WWE, kind of like how Jim Ross is one of the greatest announcers who ever lived, but he's never, treated that way in WWE. I mean, having him being set on fire by Kane back in 2003 and put in the ankle lock by Jack Swagger, a talent that Jim Ross actually brought in from Oklahoma, is an insult to everything Jim Ross has done to this business. So I think this storyline ultimately needs to reach a point of climax, and prestigiousness needs to be restored, if anything, to titles like the Intercontinental Championship and the United States Championship. Until we see championships like that being given credibility back and having credibility restored to it, I think that we're going to become more and more frustrated with storylines involving the likes of Jim Ross, Jerry Lawler, and Michael Cole. As I said, the key thing you need to take from this storyline is there are things that need a form of correction done in the business, but there are things that will never be corrected. I mean, it seems like announcers are always going to be given more in-ring time now than championships that meant something back in 1975. But it's not 1975 anymore, it's the present time of 2011, and as Vince McMahon said for the Greatest Wrestling Managers of the 80s DVD, the times are changing, and unfortunately what we have to do is change with the times, as much as we probably don't want to admit to the fact that times are changing and announcers mean more to the storylines now than the Intercontinental or United States title. We have to change with the times. And these are points that I've raised time and time again for In This Corner with Jonathan Clarke. Jim Ross has been talked about countless times for my columns. He's even had columns devoted to him entirely, where I talked about, I was so happy to hear Jim Ross's voice again on the WWE product, and I hope they continue to use his voice. I hope it goes back to Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross doing commentary each week on a full-time basis on Raw. I mean, hearing a Hall of Fame team like Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura, or Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross, or other legendary teams like Tony Schiavone and Mike Today, who did commentary back in WCW, even them. It's nice to hear a legendary team do commentary every once in a while, and to know that it could possibly go back to Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler on a full-time basis is great. Jim Ross has been making fun of Michael Cole, just as Michael Cole has been making fun of Jim Ross on Twitter. You can keep up with everything happening with the announcers at twitter.com Michael Cole and twitter.com JRsBBQ, the official Twitter account of Jim Ross's official website, which is jrsbbq.com, where his column is featured on a weekly basis. Great stuff happening in WWE other than the announcers. We got John Cena and The Rock kicking it in high gear just a few months before WrestleMania 28. Tickets for WrestleMania 28 are on sale now. Pick them up before they're sold out and you're shut out for WrestleMania 28. And the only other option you have is checking it out on pay-per-view on April 1st, 2012, which will feature John Cena and The Rock probably for the WWE Championship. We have the Divas division in an entirely different direction than it was probably 4 or 5 months ago, more interesting than it's ever been. Jack Swagger and Dolph Ziggler and all these other phenomenal tag teams like the Awesome Truth really heating up the tag team division. A lot of great stuff happening in WWE, and we'll bring you coverage of everything happening, including pay-per-view coverage of up-and-coming events such as Survivor Series and Turning Point 2011. Great stuff happening here on the website. You can keep up with everything happening on the site at twitter.com Jonathan Clarke1 HEW Entertainment. You can join the conversation at facebook.com Jonathan Clarke. You can follow me on Twitter. You can add me on MySpace, myspace.com HEW Entertainment. Radio. You can also find me on YouTube at youtube.com Jonathan Clarke 22. As I said, so much stuff happening in professional wrestling. We got a lot of stuff posted up on our website here. I just thought I would talk about the Jim Ross, Michael Cole angle, which a lot of people are paying attention to, surprisingly enough. A lot of people, as they follow the action on Raw and SmackDown through Twitter by using hashtags, talk about Jim Ross and Michael Cole more than they talk about the main event angle. And that says a lot about what Jim Ross and Michael Cole are doing more recently for the WWE product on both Raw and SmackDown. I know when Jim Ross actually was transferred over from Raw to SmackDown and became the lead voice of SmackDown, he became very frustrated with the WWE creative team because he had no idea he was switching places with Michael Cole, and at one point he actually wanted to quit. And he held on there for a while doing commentary on SmackDown, left the commentary team due to frustration, came back, and now he's looking like he never missed a step. So it's great. I love the idea of Jim Ross being back and involved in the storylines, and I hope they continue to run with this angle because it's something that interests me and will continue to interest me for a while. Not so much the storyline, but hearing Jim Ross's voice on commentary is always fun. I'm not really interested in the Michael Cole Jim Ross stuff happening, but I love hearing Jim Ross's voice on matches that feature big names, especially for a WrestleMania, and knowing